Bruce Burkholder was selected as a well-known Kansas photorealist artist in 2008. Right before Summer Gallery Work in 2014, the Tiger Media Network had an interview with Bruce Burkholder to talk about him and his compositions. Come join TMN to know a real Bruce Burkholder in his life. Hello, could you introduce yourself to everyone?
I'm Bruce Burkholder. I'm originally from this area. I spent most of my life generally here, and Kansas has been a home for me for as long as I can remember. I've lived in Denver and Fort Collins and other places, but coming back to Hays was a place where I could concentrate and come back to my art. And so I'm originally from a small town north of here, Plainville, and I think growing up in a small rural town gave me a chance to really find myself and do the artwork that I do today.
Okay. When did you start to learn how to paint?
I'll be 62 this summer, actually in August. And when I was 5 years old, I received the jumbo crayons in kindergarten, and I really liked being able to play with those and scribble with them and everything. And that kind of maybe jump-started. When I was 7 years old, I got a drawing outfit from one of my brothers, and it had charcoal sticks and pencils and that kind of thing in it. And that really set it into place that I was an artist. So from 7 years old until 62, some 50 some odd years later, it's always been there for me. And I think that's basically, that's when the idea of me being an artist started. And as far as my painting go, I was about 9 or 10 years old when I started doing paintings.
Okay. We just learned that you showed the strong interest and talent at a very young age. Like there's a painting over there called Businessman. That's the first work at 5 years old.
Yeah.
Do you remember what kind of situation that is?
It just was, you know, a small class, and like I say, the jumbo crayons, and we were given a little freedom of what we might be in the future or something, maybe. And my dad was a businessman. He owned a grocery store when I was growing up as a kid, and so I guess the little attaché case and whatever, that was the inspiration for the little businessman.
Okay, and there are also two paintings. There, you start working on age 10. That's the year you learn oil painting?
It was the start for me. I was living out in Denver, spending my summers in Denver at my grandparents' place. There was a man that was in a hobby shop, and you can go in and I'd buy model kits and put little cars and that together. But I always liked the paintings and stuff. Well, there was this man up on this little stage. He had an easel, and he was up there doing these paintings, and it smelled really good. Had turpentine and the mineral spirits using what he was painting on. And he was doing these small landscapes and that, but on one piece of the very first landscape, he took toilet paper and used this glue called gesso on the surface of the canvas, used that for texture, and I thought that was really neat. And from that point on, I would try to do paintings from calendars and magazines and things that I liked myself. And when I got into high school at the age of 14, we had an art class maybe once a week or something like that. And I really, you know, liked it a lot then, but I did not concentrate on my work. That didn't come until the summer of 1976. My father had a grocery store, and he had sold it. But the week prior to the ending of the grocery store, I was in the meat department cutting a rump roast, of all things, and I got my finger in the bandsaw, and it sliced my finger, and I had 17 stitches on my finger. So that summer, while healing my finger, just to get where I could use my brushes and that again, I thought, okay, I'm going to start concentrating. So at the age 16, probably along that time frame, around 1976, afterwards in the late 20s, I really became aware of what I was going to do.
And before that age, around 14, have anyone taught you how to paint?
I had a man that traveled from Taos, New Mexico. He would come around to these small area towns and have these art classes for house ladies or just small groups themselves. There's probably about 20 of us in there. And they happened to come into Plainville, and my folks thought maybe I would maybe take this class and see what happens with it. Well, that week we did 2-hour sessions, five days, and I sat around probably with 20 other housewives. I was the only boy there, but the man taught me brushes and the pigments and the colors that I use today. Though his work was a fast, tricky techniques, I always liked realism, but I liked abstracts, and I liked everything in between there because I think you could share, every artist can share back and forth. So that man that week probably gave me obviously the brushes and the pigments I use to this day, and that's where it began. I graduated from high school in 1970, and that fall I started down at Fort Hays State. I stayed maybe a few semesters. I had no painting classes, but I also was very uncomfortable with school, so I, kind of followed my own direction, and probably what they call a school of hard knocks, going and working at it, going to juried art shows and competitions like that in my early stages, just trying to get my name known and seeing what was out there to see what I could do.
Okay, and for those painting like this, the photorealist style, when did you start?
The photorealism probably started in '76, the summer of '76. What's behind us is a mixture of my digital photography. This is an image from a watercolor painting I did, and then behind you there's some oil paintings, and of course off the side, and this obviously is this large one up there, which has been a favorite for most people. I've always been driven for the realism, and I always like doing detail. To me, that always kind of charged me up. I could look at the weave of jeans and the texture and everything like that. Yeah. Those kind of things meant a lot to me, and that's why I spend time, obviously painting years on just one piece, and I'm not afraid of that.
What is the most challenge or most difficult things when you start painting this kind of style?
Basically, you're looking at a blank canvas and trying to find dimensions that you might be able to, fit for the image that you're maybe going to work on. But I also mentally start breaking down the detail of what it's going to take to get that painting finished. Obviously, there's early stages where it looks like abstract paintings. The brush strokes are broader. They're not refined or anything like that. And then when I start painting closer to finishing up the work, I keep fine-tuning, which getting tighter and tighter, and then I finally come to a place where I do these multi-layers on the images just to get what I want. To me, it's not a photograph. It's not the real thing. It's just kind of in between there. But people call it photorealism. There's obviously so many ways you could say that, and there's different styles where some photorealists, they'll take the image and they'll beam it on something, but they'll leave it there throughout the whole piece, or they'll beam it and then maybe paint over the top of it. I don't. I try to do the outline drawings and then just let my brushes and that take control of it and see what happens. And then there's days where I'm tired and alert and things go good, and some days not. But to me, doing realism, there's no escape from it. Once you start it, if you're going to be working on a piece for 1 or 2 years, you're kind of stuck trying to get it accomplished. So I can't have the freedom of being able to let my abstract stuff go and do it that way. And that's where my digital photography and the other digital works come into place, where I can let go a little bit.
Okay, and you have a series of mirror-themed History Holds the Future, about the history of Hays, are displayed in the Memorial Union at Fort Hays State. So at first, what brought your interest to start working on it?
History Holds the Future was an idea from Pete Felton that anybody that knows Pete, the sculptor, I carved with him from 1985 to 1990. And in the afternoons, I would go in my studio I had down there with him, and I'd start doing these paintings. Well, he felt like there wasn't enough of image from this general area of Kansas, and thought maybe people could maybe learn something from the history, maybe be more aware of it. So he challenged 4 artists to come up with the idea to do a piece of their own. And mine became this History Holds a Future, which one day I used to travel with him a lot, and he'd always talk about history. Well, one day I was coming from Plainville back to Hayes, and I thought, man, he's told me so much, maybe I'll try and incorporate this into one piece, one painting. So then I came up with the concept of History Holds a Future, which has the past and the present. And then there's a lady that's holding what I call a crystal ball, and to me that's the future. We don't really know what it is, but I kind of left it kind of blank, but there's kind of a little image of haze to where it kind of, you don't know. So to me, I think we can set in the rocking chair of life where we can see in our past, we can see at the present, and yet we can maybe see into the future. So we're kind of in that strange rocking chair. And when I started the painting, before that, I thought I was just going to do one big, large landscape, just general things. But then with the history knowledge that Pete was giving me, I thought, let's try this. So I went down to the Historical Society, started doing research of the old buildings, that kind of thing. Personally, I was not really interested in history. But after that, I began to look at everything available around us and everything. And so I started the painting. I did the sketch in the fall of '85. In 1986, I actually started doing the painting. And then 1990 came along, I got remarried, and I had started a different job, and I couldn't afford to work on that big piece. And so it sat in my studio for a number of years, and then this couple realized it wasn't getting done, so they asked me why not. And so they offered to buy it to see it finished. And starting on the painting in 1986, and I finished it in 2009. So 23 years later had passed before I got it done. And to me it was, I couldn't believe I finished it. After painting on one corner and getting down to the final corner and signing my name, you look back at it and all the years and the different things that happened. My father had passed away, my daughter was born, and I worked on different things and worked for different people. But in 2007, I came back to my art full time. I had worked for a radiology group doing x-ray things and helping them. But in 2007, I came back. I had Brenda at the Art Center had asked me, she knew I'd been working on this history painting, wanted to know if I wanted to showcase it on one of the gallery walks. And it was in this building in 2007. We had the gallery walk, and the building was kind of open to people then. But I set up, and then from then on, I've been in here working in the building and working with the Art Center with the different art shows they have up front, and different classes and students and people coming in off the highway and meeting different tourists and that kind of thing. Really, it's been really nice and comfortable. There is a downside to it though. When I'm painting the high-end detail, it takes a lot of concentration. And so sometimes I try to come down here and work when nobody's around. Otherwise, it's an up and on balance where you're trying to find when you can work and do the concentration, such as you guys filming today or whatever. Over the years, I've learned to be able to handle the filming a little bit better and paint. Used to be I couldn't do that. I've always been a kind of a shy person, so for me it was difficult to be in the public. But then after the juried shows and you kind of grow out of it to a certain point. But I still have a little bit of shyness. But I enjoy meeting people, and to me, if somebody likes a piece of my work and everything, I'm happy for that. No matter what I'll do my art. It's always been there. It's like a monkey on my back. It won't leave you alone. I think that's with any musician, writer, actor, anything like they're basically born with. You'll follow it some way or other, and I'm just one of these guys that kept pursuing it, and so finally I was able to come back to it full time, and that's what I do.
Okay, and would you like to talk about the work you're currently working on?
Actually, I'm working on a painting of a church. It's a local church, and the painting I started. It's about a year or so ago. I had some people come in, and they had images from this church back in the 20s, and they liked all the ornate design and all the artwork and everything that went into doing such a building. And now it's basically just blank paint and a few things like that. So they wanted to capture the old image of that. And so I attained the old photographs from the Historical Society and started working on it, started looking at the what it might take to get it finished. Obviously I'm working from black and white photograph, but that painting, sometimes when you're looking at certain things, you'll see colors, and so you don't always know what it is, and so you try to find a balanced what feels comfortable. And then when you start the piece I'm working on that church right now, the detail is so intense that every time I look at it myself, I go back and think, oh, you know, am I going to get this done or not? Because I know I have a good year ahead of me, even just on the minute detail. And but that's a challenge. I like the craziness of it, and so I keep that going that direction.
Yeah. With so many compositions in your life, which is your most proud of, or which impressed you most?
I would say that History Holds the Future to me was a real mental challenge to see it finished. There was so much detail, but when I was doing the painting on the historical photographs, learning what like Wild Bill Hickok and Buffalo Bill and some of these real early famous people were in this town, and you kind of walking down those streets, and I start thinking back what it was like then. So I was able to time travel with that. Probably that was one of my most difficult and favorite paintings, besides the painting I did of Pete Felton, which is The Emerging Life. And back in 1985, I had gone through a difficult time. I was just coming out of a divorce for the second time. Mentally and physically, I was not well. But Pete Felton kind of came around and kind of basically got me back up off my feet and said, "What are you doing? Let's do your work." And so that was my beginning when I started carving with Pete from 1985 to 1990, and I still do things for him off and on. And so as far as one person in my life that really put the art in a lot of people, I would say it'd be Pete Felton. He has graciously took me under his wings and showed me how to carve and made me look at my two-dimensional paintings in a three-dimensional sense. And so that to me was something that most people probably never get that chance to be able to have that challenge to do.
Okay. Are you teaching anyone or student how to paint?
I've had people ask me how to paint. I'm probably a major space cadet. I don't know if I could teach people to do. I mean, there's certain things I could show them, but mentally I've never thought that way. To me, it's always been a personal thing, and I think that's why I had a difficult time in school. I couldn't handle a lot of things around me, and so I always went my own direction, and that's how I tried to discover things that worked for me, and I always followed what I felt like my own heart and soul. And even if it was right or wrong, sometimes maybe the realism is not what people like or whatever, and that's fine. But I always stayed true to my direction of what I felt like I wanted. And I think anybody in the teaching and they do in quality things, if a person has that and they want to learn that and do that direction, I think they should. But for me, it was, like I say, uncomfortable, and so that's how I just kept focusing on what was going to happen. And by doing the juried art shows and the early competitions, I traveled around and did national shows and regional shows, and so that kind of gave me an idea of what's out there. And I was like 24 years old before I ever went to an art museum. In a crazy kind of way, I did not want the art museums or the other art to influence what I was thinking, which is stupid. And then later on in life, I started going to the art shows and you know, just being able to be part of all these great masters from hundreds of years back and think of what challenges they've been through and the mixture of everything. And I'm fortunate with Facebook and the internet now. You know, you have everything. You meet other artists throughout the world, and to me that touches so much that we never could do before, just at the touch of the button. So the sharing to me is immensely, and through musicians, writers, actors, and other friends that I have, I like it all. You know, it kind of, I don't want to close my mind off. My folks were never that way. They always kept me thinking of other people, and we were always, you know, meeting anybody and everybody from everywhere, because that helped, you know, give you more of a broader sense of your own self. And so they gave me that, and that was one thing that my folks, they encouraged my art. They were not real strong with it. And to a certain point, they said, well, you're going to have to do another job or do something like that. And I know still to this day, a lot of artists still struggle, still try to find their way with what they're doing. Luckily enough, I've been able to have good clients and people that have patronized me to get it going. And as far as at the level where I'm at now, I'd still be doing it. Still wouldn't make any difference. If I wasn't making any money, I'd still do my art, because that's what I know.
So you have any future plan about your work, your gallery?
The gallery, hopefully just keep concentrating on what I'm doing now. I would like to do maybe more digital fun things or looser paintings. When I get older and I can't see or I can't hold my brush still, I'll do some crazy stuff and let it go again, you know. Or if I go blind or some weird thing, maybe I'll do touch paintings or something in that sense. Or maybe I will talk to other people that come along and try to help them find their way without things that I had to go through. I've been through some real struggles financially and health-wise, and so if I can be of influence to somebody else and help them through it, I'd love to do that. Back in 1978, I had a chemical damage done to my left side of my body, and I have a few paintings of examples of that. And in our chemicals in that we use toluene, xylene, methylene chloride, and some of those chemicals that we use are very deadly, they're very toxic. And in 1978, I was just having all kinds of freedom and just doing all kinds of crazy paintings, and I wasn't paying any attention, and I did not have proper ventilation. And what happened was these chemicals damaged the left side of my body, nerve damage, where I could put my hand up against a wall or in hot and cold water, and I couldn't tell you. It wasn't numb or anything, but it was like out of a body experience. And that took me 3 years to get over that, because there's no antibiotics to take. And when I talk to classes now, and even students and spray paints and everything else they're using, use ventilation, use a respirator, protect yourself. I, being a stupid one, they said that, oh, some of that stuff is cancer causing, and knock on wood, so far I've been free of it. But one never knows, you know. It doesn't. Each body is differently, and an example would be like my mother will be 98 years old. She's been around a lot of different things all her entire life and had a long life. And my dad lived to be 75, and he was around things and had difficult health problems. So to me, if you're going to go out and do your artwork and be around strange chemicals and things like that, pay attention to the labels and you know, so you can carry on what you're wanting to do.
Anything you want to share with us about your work, your gallery?
Well, on the gallery side, I just, you know, as long as I can, you know, stay where I'm at and doing what I'm doing and sharing with everybody, and hopefully everybody can enjoy it, and the freedom, and everything changes. I've been through many different studios over my lifetime, and I've been in bedrooms and in large buildings, and so I just kind of take it one day at a time, and I'm a faithful person. I believe in God. I have a lot of people that don't, and they have different religions, and that's fine. But for me, I think it's something of my faith that it's a gift to me. So I plan on just trying to share it, and if like I can, keep the work in here for people to come in and enjoy, and they can say, well, hey, somebody else has got something rather, and check this out. That's what carries it on through other people, the travelers. And Hayes is very fortunate to have a lot of extremely good, talented people, artists, and I think that shows the good schools. I think that reaches out to many people, so they can take it and share it among everybody else. And the size of Hayes, you get to know your people. You have some kind of a comfortable feel with it. Where you're in a bigger city, you probably still have that, but for Hayes, we can have 1,000 to 1,500 people come through on a gallery walk, and even the bigger cities sometimes do not do that. So Brenda Mader and the Art Center, they've done a lot of great things for this community, and for her, she's been something else that a lot of artists and other people can be proud of, that we've had such a person like that and the community that goes through.
Thanks for your time.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.